What's up, V2 crew? This is Unknown here, and this is going to be another episode in the series Is It Killing Your Games? And today we're going to discuss hype, hypitude, and both sides to it overhype and also underhype, which is something I think a lot of people don't really consider. In regards to overhype, well, in regards to just hype, I guess. We'll start in the middle ground here. With hype, this is something is announced or something is coming out soon, be it a game, a console, and everyone's talking about it. Everyone's so excited about it, and their excitement spreads to you, and that's kind of what hype is. And so, if you get hype, you're more inclined to buy something. You're more inclined to just, I guess, impulse buy it, which is probably not a good thing. You should at least somewhat think of your purchases. And like I said before, you shouldn't just buy stuff on a whim because maybe you're never going to play it. Just adding it to your backlog, that's not really usually that great. Because also, too, if something just comes out, it's usually full price. So at that point, why are you buying it? You can just wait, literally buy it anytime. Now, sometimes these things are exclusive, I guess, or in case of a system where it's going to sell out really quickly. But in regards to most games, they're pretty readily available all the time. So you don't really need to buy it day one, is what I think. But hype can do that for you. Keep that in mind when something comes out. The other thing is overhype. It could cause you to think a game is going to be better than it really is, and it can make a game that would have otherwise been amazing for you feel kind of like a letdown just because it was overhyped. So try not to raise your expectations, I guess is what I'm saying. Even if it's been a game in the making for years upon years, in which case your hype just might die down because they keep delaying it or something. That's happened probably to everybody. But if it's a really, really, really good game, say it's AA plus quality, A triple star is what you're expecting, and you don't get that, then it feels like a maybe B quality game to you. And this not only affects the gamer who's playing the game, but it kind of affects the developer as well. Because, say they put out a really good game, then their game is just overhyped to the moon. And people are just disappointed. And then, because they're slightly disappointed, then they start magnifying that disappointment, lashing out on Twitter or what have you, and that's not good. Then the developer feels bad and people are like attacking them. Why was your game not as good as the original? Why is the sequel not as good as the original? Which is another thing, too. Another thing that can cause a lot of hype is just how good the original might be, and then it's almost like the developer has to exceed expectations. They can't just live up to expectations. That's not good enough. That's not good enough for the hype. They have to exceed it. So there's that. It's not only killing games, potentially, it's also killing devs too, in a sense. Not literally, but you get what I mean, I think. It's affecting them as well. So we talked about impulse buying, we talked about overhype. We also just hype, I guess in general, could influence you to buy a game that is maybe outside of your wheelhouse that you don't really enjoy that much. You might play a game though, and you're not really enjoying it terribly, but you say you enjoy it just so that you live into the hype or whatever you want to call it, however you want to state it. In which case, you might actually be hyping up a game that's not that great. And then the cycle continues. Someone else plays the game because they hear you like it and they say they like it. even though it's not the greatest of games. But because everyone's saying it's okay, then, or really good, then you're just spreading the message of this mediocre game is really good. And I think that happens a lot too in regards to indies versus like AAA games. I think the AAA games, more so if it has a big IP name to it, it's either going to get shot down and people are not going to like it because it's not as good as they expected, or it's just going to be because of the popularity contest of the IP and of the developer. They say this game is better than some indie game that almost no one's heard of. And that comes into play, I think, kind of a lot these days, especially for things like video game awards. What are going to get nominated for the video game award? This awesome indie game or this mediocre AAA game that everyone's heard of? You know it's going to be the one everyone's heard of, right? The mediocre one. Yeah, unfortunately. All right, and so similar to that, I guess, ties into underhype. Now, underhype is kind of like what I said. A game will fly under the radar, no one will hear about it. It can be an amazing game, but because it was underhyped or undersupported for social media spreading wise, you miss it or you don't play it. Like you might have heard of it, but because no one's talking about it, everyone's talking about the big budget AAA game coming out next week. You just don't really give it much thought. You kind of just think, I'll play the big AAA game. Keep this other one in the backlog. It was underhyped. It might have been way, way better, but because it was underhyped and not talked about, you didn't touch it. So, another thing somewhat similar to hype would be in regards to when a showcase, I guess you can call it, or a direct comes. And if a game is featured in the direct, you kind of have a couple of parallel things with the overhype, underhype, hype. Okay, so you're excited for the direct. So if it's a game or an IP that you like, you're gonna get excited about it. You might rush to pre-order it or what have you. But also too, the flip side to this, if it's a game you haven't heard of as much or whatever, it could just be overshadowed by all the hype of all the other games in that showcase or in that direct, and you're gonna cause you to miss things. Anyways, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. Is hype killing your games? Is it enhancing your games in some way? I'd like to know. Lessons learned from this. I guess just take everything, I don't want to say with a grain of salt, but try to maybe calm the expectations, try to find more of a middle ground. Maybe give some of the games that aren't as hyped maybe a little bit of a thought in your mind. I'm not saying buy them all. I'm just saying just because it's underhyped or under talked about doesn't mean it's great. And also too, don't set the bar too high for games, especially like sequels. Don't expect it to out succeed the expectations, outlive the first game, and because that's not really that fair. Don't impulse buy. Like I said, if something is maybe going to be a really hard to find thing, maybe get in the pre-order list if it's like some console or something. And that's another thing too. Consoles can be overhyped or underhyped. That's another point as well. It's not just applying to games, but the consoles kind of tie into the games eventually, you know, because you need the console to play the game. So yeah. All right. I am going to wrap this up here. If you would like to join the V2 crew, I'll post some links in the description. If you want to subscribe and like the video, that would be awesome. Awesome to have you around. And with that being said, everybody, have a good night, good morning, enjoy your games. Thanks so much for watching. Spread that positivity, game on your own terms, you do you, and be your V2.